group here in the Ontario Craft Brewers?
Sure. My name's Eric. I'm the brewer at Old Flame up in Port Perry.
I'm Karen. I'm the brewmaster at Legal Craft Brewery in Vaughan.
I'm Tanner. I'm the head brewer for Celtic Street Brewery in Toronto.
I'm Doug. I'm the brewmaster at the Second Wedge Brewing Company in Uxbridge.
I'm Bruce from County Durham Brewing, owner, operator, brewer, general dishwasher, and everything else.
And I'm Jack Doak. I'm the founder and president of Old Flame Brewing Company, and Eric's my head brewer down there.
My name is Drew Knox. I'm with the Ontario Craft Brewers Association. Started way back, I guess, first generation craft brewery, 1988-89, with the Algonquin Brewing Company up in Formosa, Ontario. Some of you may have heard of that one, and things have changed a lot in the last 30 years. So we're here today to help you a little bit. And before we get started, I thought if I could just do a little bit of a questionnaire and intro. How many right now of you are selling hops to an Ontario craft brewery? That's not too bad.
Oh.
And how many of you feel that craft brewing in Ontario has peaked? Okay, one. That's good. I'm glad to see that that's a low number. And the reason for that is that things have changed a lot in the industry, and I'd like to just give you a little bit of an overview before we get into some questions.
Go ahead.
Because you may have seen some things in the media where people are saying, oh, well, the craft brewing industry, there's 230 craft brewers in Ontario now. The industry's peaked. It's downhill from here, and you get the media people and journalists that are pushing that type of line of questioning and planting those type of seeds, and they're just not true. Right now, we do have in Ontario approximately 230 or so bricks and mortar breweries, and that's fine. And we feel that the Ontario Craft Brewers Association that number is going to grow to about 400, maybe even 450, where to the point where we will have a craft brewery in every community in the province. Now, so well, how can you support? How can the markets possibly support that many breweries? And there's some good answers to that. And one is that things have changed. When I started my brewery way back in 1989, a brewery was a manufacturing facility, and that's all. And we just brewed beer. We sent it to the beer store way back in those days because 98% of all beer was sold in the beer store. That's just the way it was. If you were an import, you couldn't even get into the beer store because the way it was set up, only Ontario breweries could sell in the beer store. By the way, that number today is less than 70%. So what's happening is that the things changed. Algonquin, Upper Canada, Steam Whistle, we all came out, and it was first generation. We didn't have any stores. We just beer into the system. NAFTA and GATT changed all that in 1995. All of a sudden, imports were coming in. A lot of us were hurt very, very badly. A bunch disappeared. Some survived. Model changed. Then we got into second generation, where those brewers were then able to start to adjust their models or build their models on the new realities. Then you had brewers like Muskoka, Steam Whistle, in Amsterdam, and that group formed, and we started to work with the Ontario government because they were getting concerned the brewers were disappearing, and we started the OCB, formalized Ontario Craft Brewers Association, and then a lot of new breweries started opening up, and still, with that model of not really focusing on any type of store or, really being involved in the community, more involved, perhaps than some of the original brewers, and relying less on beer store, getting into LCBO and other venues of distribution. Today, it's changed a lot. Our association is pushing now almost 100 breweries. We have about another 100 or so that are out there that are not members of our brewery or of our association for whatever reason. Some people just don't like to join, as you know. You've got a few hop growers out here too that aren't members of your association. for whatever joint. Not a big deal. But what's happening is as the industry's changing, and the market is smart. The market knows what's going on. And what I'd like to do is we are getting now applications in from small breweries. Most of our association is under 5,000 hectoliters. Of the 100 breweries we have, about 85 of them are 0 to 5,000 hectoliters. So this is the model, and I call this fourth generation brewery in Ontario. This is a recent assessment. Every time somebody opens a brewery, if they want to apply to become a member of the Craft Brewers Association, we send them out a package. They start to complete the application form. We send them documents, a number of different documents about our new strategic plan now goes out to them, and that's on our website. If you'd like to see our new strategic plan, it's very public, it's on the website. And then they fill the application. Our brewmaster, head master brewer, Bill White, vets that application. He gives it a report. So this is a report from one that came in just a few weeks ago. Just to give you an idea of a fourth generation of what's happening. So the brewery opened in June 30th of 2017 with strong support from fellow craft brewers and wineries in the region. Collaboration is a big, big part of our philosophy, where we help each other. Barley Days Brewery closed for a day to support the opening, and the staff from 555 Brewing Company also provided strong support. It is great to witness the mutual support of these local craft brewers, and the brewery pays back the compliment by having guest taps at craft brewers from across the province in their tap room. Now these guest taps, that's an example of cross-selling, which we've been trying to promote and even get the LCBO or the government to allow us to sell each other's beer, to have a whole series of craft beer stores. But cross-selling on taps is a start for that. Anybody that has because the brewery now opens, then they have a tied house license, and some of them have food, and I'll get into some of this a little bit later. The brewery located in an old meat company plant, from which the name was honored, the historic roots of the brewery. Quickly, the brewery is becoming an integral part of the community with the local farmers market in the parking lot. We're not allowed to have our beer in the farmers markets. Some of our members are bringing the farmers market to them. So again, pretty smart. And this is, we didn't tell them that. They just figured all that out themselves. In the summer, the community has a skating rink take place. In the winter months, right at the brewery. We have the local market suppliers continue to have their products sold in the brewery year-round. Cheese, bread. Combine this with local fundraisers, book launches, and a local chef on Wednesdays, and it's easy to see why the brewery is succeeding in its vision to become the community center and local gathering place for the brewery. The brewery has 3 full-time employees and 12 to 24 part-time workers depending on the season. The brewing equipment was built in Ontario by Creveller Canada. The equipment consists of 2-vessel 12.5 hectoliter brewhouse, a 25 hectoliter hot water tank, 4 12.5 hectoliter unit tanks, and 4 22 hectoliter bright beer tanks. This is complemented by a Creveller keg washer and filler, as well as a 4-head Creveller bottle filler with a capacity of 280 bottles per hour. Canning is done by one of Session Craft Canning mobile canning units. The canning unit comes to the brewery. They focus on traditional brewing styles from the UK, Belgium, and Germany. Their core brands are ESB, a dry English stout, a Kolsch style beer. They have also brewed bitters, IPAs, saisons, Hefeweizen, fruit beers, Flanders Red, Bière de Garde, and Berliner Weiss. Beer is sold, and this is really interesting, beer is sold on site, in bottles, cans, and growlers, and their only other sales are to licensees in their region and some in Toronto. The plan is to grow slowly and not get overextended, so there are no sales in the LCBO, the beer store, or grocery at this time. The brewery has been recognized as a top 10 brewery destination by the CBC and also a beer destination by Condé Nast Traveler magazine. The brewery is excited with the support they've received from the town and local community, and They are a very positive force in the community. They seem to be off to a good start. So when you have that kind of model where you're bonding with your local community, just a second, when you're bonding with your local community and you are not relying on, because when you've got 450 breweries in the province, and if they're each brewing 5 brands, there is no way the LCBO is going to be, able to accommodate all of those SKUs on the shelves. There is no way that grocery is going to accommodate that. You can get into beer store, but again, beer store is a 440 store system, only 100 of which have self-serve type stores. So when you say that the craft brewing industry, well, how can this happen? How can it survive? When they're small like this and they have this type of model, they're insulated from a lot of the political stuff that actually happens. They bonded with their community, and this is a brewery that's relying on its own trading area and the community in there with them to rely and to build. And a lot of that's what's happened. So the whole concept of small, bonding with your community, having a tied house license where you can sell your own beer, sometimes have food involved, which is very important. If you're going to have food, you better have good food. An event space, or be able to convert your tasting room for charity events and fundraisers. That's the new model. That's how you get a brewery in every single community, that you're not impacted by some of the changes that happen like that at government, and they do. Because the big guys, the major breweries, the wolf is always at the door. We just saw that in the last little while, wherever there's a switch to consignment, which is not a fun thing for some of our members who have trusted that system, loaded in $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 worth of beer, thought they were going to get paid in 30 days, and now all of a sudden it goes to consignment. Oh, that beer that you put in there, well, now you're not going to get your money on 30 days. In fact, you don't get any money from us until that beer is sold. And that's how it works. So in fact, these breweries now owe the beer store money. So and that happens. So to insulate, and the market's already figured this out. And the other thing that's interesting about this is a couple of other things. One is that the brewers are also very smart in that they recognize they've built their whole business on maybe not some of these guys. The girls are definitely smart. But what's happened is they built their business on new flavors and alternative flavors. And that's great. But they've quickly started to realize that sessionable beers, a mainstream lager beer, all right, in their own community, some people want that. And especially the younger millennials, they want that type of beer. And so they go, yeah, my daughter likes sour beers and barrel-aged beers. She's 29 years old. So what happens is she's, yeah, Deb, where's a brewery I can go and have a few, and I can have 3 or 4 of my friends. So the breweries have responded to that, and they are putting out sessionable beers, not just highly hopped IPAs. Every time one of those beers is consumed, that's a beer that the mainstream majors are not getting. And when you've got 400 breweries out there, and they're starting to, and the brewers are reacting to the marketplace by having sessionable beers, there's where your volume comes. Another source of volume. And see, in this industry is not too much different from the restaurant business, in the sense that the only 3 ways you can increase your sales in the restaurant business is more traffic, get more traffic to a beer restaurant, get them to come there more frequently, or raise your prices. So in these environments here where these small breweries are set up, if they can bond with their community and outreach and grow it enough, and then get them to come more frequently and buy their beer instead of buying a mainstream beer from the beer store or the LCBO down the street, all of a sudden things start to change. And then the third factor, so it's the new model, it's bonding with your community, that type of model. It's introducing sessionable beers, which has an impact on hops. And also these smaller breweries, you see all the different flavors, that they talk about. So that's an opportunity for you to get to know your brewery, build that relationship, and of course grow what you can sell rather than selling what you grow. Find out what they want, get to know it, and have a good relationship with your brewery. And then the third aspect of it is that females today are so much more involved in this market, and it is a bigger market. And so there are ways to, in these small communities, attract and be relevant to the female market, which is already happening, that too is going to grow. So this industry sits right now at around 8% of the market. It's about 800,000 hectoliters or so, give or so. So we only have 8%. But as we grow and get into all these different communities and start to relate to them in a bigger way, in a better way, and we start to put the type of beers out that they want, that 8% share, that grows. And there's not a lot that's going to stop that, I don't think. So I think when somebody says, well, the industry's peaked, not even close. When we're in a grocery store, the numbers are where we're guaranteed a minimum of 20% shelf space. The numbers, we are getting 30, 35%. So that's because when people can shop the store and get choice and see what's going on, that's the potential. So we're a long way from that. So in my opinion, that's pretty good news for you as hop growers. But you need to focus on your quality, just like the OCB is focused on. How much time have we spent on quality, quality, quality? Manuals, we've got QMS manual, health and safety manual, shelf life manual, a new one coming out on environment. We pounded on that for the last 3 or 4 years. It's come up today, and again, your quality is going to have to, you'll have to react to that. You just have to. The Brew On program, I think, is very, very good. We need to keep promoting that. I don't know if anybody saw that today, but we need to put that out at the conference this year, Catherine, which we will, and in a much bigger way. And I think you're going about it exactly the right way by not getting too finite in how you qualify. Not yet. Maybe later you will. So anyway, as I mentioned, that's where, in our opinion, where this industry is growing. It's a great opportunity for you, but you need to, in my opinion, really get to know the brewers in your region. On our website, we match up our breweries by the regions, and so they're all there. They're there on the 13 or so tourism regions that Ontario Ministry of Tourism puts out. You can find them by region. Find these guys, find out where they are, get them to know you. You know them. You need to educate their brewers on what you can do, and there's a lot of specialty beers that are brewing. They're each probably brewing 5 or 6, 7 beers. Maybe not all that. So maybe if you don't have big volumes on a certain type of hop, well, maybe you can work with them on a different type or some of your smaller volume hops for their needs. The more you get to know them, the more you build those relationships, I think the better off your industry and our industry will be, because we know that the market is very, very interested in local and independent. There's no question. We see that all the time. We see people creeping into the craft designation in spite of all the work we've done. We talked about that on yours. We're going to try to work on programs to protect that as much as we can, but local and independent is the thing we're going to be pushing. So I'll shut up now and let the real experts answer the start. So I don't know where you want to start on this.
Well, I just want to thank you for that intro, and it just kind of lays some of the groundwork of what OCB is working on, and I believe your plan went out 15 years, Drew? Yeah. Was it 10, 15 years that I saw that the plan was there for? And I think that in that initiative of local independent, that creates greater opportunity for Ontario hop growers to develop those relationships with the brewers. And so I guess we'll have to teach that at the college, that they'll have to source them out versus call 1-800 send me the hops, because to me, I'm a guy from Niagara, so I'm biased, and the wine industry was like this 20 years ago, where people didn't want to sell their wine on the LCBO listing. They didn't have the volume. So what they created was we'll call it the on-farm or the come and see me experience. And from there, they did the tasting and the food samplings. And I think I'm seeing this. I'm seeing this as we'll call it the mom and pop, because that's what they're calling it, the mom and pop brewery, that people in the neighborhood or the community want to come and support. The husband and wife or the family that's brewing the beer, growing and buying from a local hop grower, and supporting that local industry, and take some beer home with them at the end of the day. So I agree with you. I've heard the nightmares about dealing with the LCBO from my end of town, and I think this, you know, there are opportunities at different levels, but I think the growth is people don't want to drive, they just want to come, or maybe want to invite the whole city of Toronto to visit your neighborhood and then send them back to fill their, I say, empty their wallet, send them back to fill it up, to invite them back to empty it again next weekend. So I think those are some real opportunities that we can work on. And so I'm going to ask the panel, because, you know, with them going down this road, how committed are they to work with us? And of course, some years we're going to be able to achieve that quality much easier than other years. So it's kind of, we'd like to make the commitment, but what is it that they're looking for us for a commitment? And you know, it's a long-term relationship. This is not a, you know, we want to sign a one-year contract. Well, it could be the stellar year of hops. It could be the worst year of hops. Then that would determine, you know, us. So as people that are invested in the long term, and I know that you guys are invested in the long term, those are things that we want to work on together. So I'm just going to kind of pass the mic along and ask that question, and then we'll take some questions off the floor. So the question is, are you willing to commit to Ontario hop growers if you can build that relationship to help you market those products?
Certainly we're willing to work with Ontario hop growers. You know, we're always looking to source new hops, local hops, especially for use in our seasonal and specialty products. So yes, you know, the more of you there are, the more hops we have available, the better the choice for everybody.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in Ontario hops. For us, like, we have 4 brands that we produce regularly, and consistency is the key thing with those brands. Like, I would love to commit to contracts with farms, but being able to supply us is a big thing as well. Like, I can make seasonal brands and showcase the hops, but if I'm looking for big volume, I need farms that can supply the volumes that I need.
You define that volume? What's a large volume?
So I did 1,500 hectoliters last year.
No, but
Or,
how
yeah.
many pounds do you need of hops? 3 pounds of hops.
For one core? For one core brand, I need, my main brand, I need 4 kilos of hops for 20 hex, and that brand I did 800 hex last year, so I need a fairly large volume for that.
So if we presented marketing co-ops to you, or groups of producers that can meet your demand, you'd be interested?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good.
There's thinking that maybe the hop growers might grow, say, you know, a whole bunch of Cascade hops. Put that into like a cooperative where they all meet.
like New Zealand does.
Yeah, and they all meet a certain standard, and then
Basket.
you know that that's
Absolutely.
there, and then you could pick off of that.
Well, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
That would make selection a lot easier for us too. That's one of those things that I've run into in the past. I've worked with some hop growers in the past, and what ends up happening is, you know, you do a couple really great brews, and then you go to buy more hops, and it's already been sold off to somebody else. So it's kind of hard to maintain that consistency and showcasing when, you know, it's not all there. But if you're able to kind of blend it all together and have a whole bunch more, that works a lot better for us, right?
So what is it you need the hop grower? What do you need?
I mean,
what kind of relationship do you need?
I mean, my brewery, we're fairly new. We've only been open for 6 months, so our flagship brand's a Czech style Pilsner, so that those old school kind of noble hops. I mean, in terms of the commitment, I guess it's just building those relationships.
Great little brewery, by the way, Salter Street down on Queen Street, and the beer is terrific, and it's very drinkable. And they've got a nice relationship with the local cheese guy up the street, and you go in, you see all the tanks. I mean, you know, consumers want to see the tanks. They want to be sitting there drinking and see the tank. They don't necessarily really know what's going on, but they just want to see them and be part of it and be part of that atmosphere and know that it's craft. The other thing about these session beers like that, people want to be drinking craft. It's part of the local food movement. And even though they're drinking a fairly mainstream lager tasting type of beer, right, it's under the craft halo. So I'm drinking craft. And, you know, because they don't want to drink mainstream beer. You know, my kids are never going back to that. It's not just because of me, that's just, and their friends. They want, and so when our brewers give them a beer that's like that they can drink, the kids, the millennials still think I'm drinking a craft beer. So it's the best of both worlds. And it's a very good beer.
Is that a question?
Just to comment on the last gentleman who was talking about being able to secure that constant supply 365 days a year, instead of just leaving things sort of open or hanging with the local growers. Do you not want to form a contract with that local grower and say, look, I only need 600 pounds of such and such a variety, can you supply that? And sign on a dotted line, everybody knows what's going to happen, everybody knows what your expectations are.
Especially when, I mean, that makes perfect sense with a pre-existing brand, something you have, but my experience in the past has been development of new brands. So it's very hard to predict, you know, when you start rolling out beer, how much that you're going to sell in a year, especially when it's a brand new product, right? And, you know, it's difficult overall to be able to say, yeah, you know, I love this beer, this is great, but I shell it out to my customers, they don't like it, it doesn't work, right? And then I'm stuck with the dog line of holding on to whatever the poundage of contract, right?
But for your regular core beers, that could work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So most hops today are bought under contract. There's very few hops on the spot market anymore. The spot market's pretty much dried up, although there's been quite a bit of surplus over the last few years. So there has been hops on the spot market, but most of it is all contracted now. All the growers want to know, whether it's a grower or an agency that you're dealing with, any kind of a distributor wants a contract, he wants to know how many pounds you've got. And now the problem is that guys are contracting for hundreds of pounds of hops and not picking them up, and you're stuck in people's coolers. So that's another problem that's going on right now. But everything is contracted now. So yes, if you can supply it, if you can guarantee that, you know, like if I contract for 200 pounds of Willamets, you could give me 200 pounds of Willamets. Yes, a contract's a good thing, as long as you can fulfill the contract.
Kind of the counter, or the reaction to that, though, sometimes is the case of brewer contracts for too many hops.
Well, that's the problem.
And when you go on the Brewers Association website or some of the other websites, Craft Brewers Access, almost every day there's a post going up there saying, I have 2,000 pounds of Cascade from 2015 I need to get rid of, you know, take it off my hands at any price. So, you know, brewers are kind of caught in the middle of trying to figure out what are we going to need for the coming year, and then a year from now thinking, oh geez, we got like way too many hops, now what do we do? So
there's an exchange that's run where you guys can actually book your surplus and offer it out at a price point.
yeah.
And so promoting that would help you guys take responsibility of the contract to satisfy that obligation, maintain a relationship with the producer, right? Because otherwise the producer, if they have to supply your demand, they'll go to the exchange and get it for you.
Well, obviously,
and so there has to be a trust, right?
Yeah, because obviously you want to sell your product.
Yeah.
And you know, a year from now, you don't want to be stuck with, you know, a couple of hundred pounds or several hundred pounds of something. So we're in this together. Yeah. The difficulty for us as brewers is projecting how much we need. And every year, every fall when the new harvest comes in, how much am I going to need? And it's really, really difficult to project because we're all on a constant growth curve. We're going to be selling more beer, making more beer 6 months from now, but how much more? 50% more, double? It's and then trying to project our hop usage on top of that. It's a real challenge, and you know, I wish I had an answer to it. But I really like the idea of a cooperative sales, for, you know, hop growers getting together and saying, this is how much we have of these different kinds of hops at particular alpha levels. That would really help the brewers.
maybe even if you start with 1 or 2,
Yeah.
start small, walk before you run, get that up and running, and then you add another, style. Like, get the thing working first.
Well, we've been talking about regional centers being
Yeah.
the east, the west, and that where growers collectively will process and then can market, but we also need a kind of a selling desk of sort. So I've been approached by people to start up something like that, and I says, well, go talk to the brewers first, find out what system they're using, find out the system that's going to work best for them, and then come back to the growers and say, this is what the brewers want,
Yeah.
can you do this? Because we can say, well, we're going to do this for you guys, and you guys go, well, that's nice, but that doesn't work with us. So to us, you're our end user, and I understand, the growth for different styles of beer are hard to project. And so the best we can do is to set up regional centers where we're kind of regional co-ops, and then work with the brewers in that area. But I also see the brewers can use Ontario hops as a way to market their product different in the marketplace than, like, you don't say, well, I use West Coast hops or I use German hops, because you're not using that as a marketing standpoint. But you could be saying, I'm happen to be your neighbor and you're buying hops from me, and that could be part of your marketing, that launch of a beer, and hopefully, so that's where I see, something more tangible down the road on the one-to-one. But because there's advantage to both parties versus, well, I'll buy Ontario hops because I'm just going to make the beer, but I won't tell anybody what's in it. I think you need to get out there and kind of wave the flag, just like we're trying to wave the flag and say, look, we're trying to find that local grain, we're trying to find that local hop and sell that. But definitely have these people, they probably will approach you to find out, because they've come to me with a list, and I said, well, I don't know what you guys are using today to buy your hops. If you're just going to a one-stop shop and putting in, like a shopping cart, and you pick out what you want, and they just send it to you, and it shows up at your door. How do we as hop growers develop something that gives you the one-stop shop? Because I think that's what's really going to work, right? Because if you have something successful and you want a volume, you don't want to deal with each one of us for 10 pounds. You want the full order to come delivered to your doorstep, so you can continue to make beer, right? Do I kind of something like that?
Yeah, sometimes, but not all. Well, how do you guys buy your hops now?
We buy them under contract, yeah. Except that I'm different, is I don't use hop pellets, I only use whole hops. So for me, transportation charges are a big item. So, to bring a small box of hop pellets across the country is reasonably priced, but when you start shipping 200-pound bales across the country, the cost of shipping those bales is pretty high. So if I can buy locally sourced whole hops, I'm in. But you need to have some sort of co-op or something where I can go and say, okay, well, they've got this number of cascades projected for this year, or they think they're going to grow like 1,000 pounds of Willamette, so let's see if we can contract for 200 or 400 pounds of those Willamettes in whole hops. So you only have to dry them, you don't have to pelletize them, anything. You just have to dry them down to about 10%, give me good analysis, which is another thing that's missing, is good analysis, okay? I went on the Hop Growers website. There's very little information there except for a listing of the growers. There's nothing that tells me how long the growers have been growing. Tells me how many plants, cultivars they have, but that means nothing to me. It's yield, it's all about yield. It doesn't matter how many plants you have in the ground. There's no historical data, because I guess we're not that far along to give me any historical data. You can't say, Well, you know, 2 years ago we got like 200 pounds of Willamette. Last year we got 400 pounds of Willamette. This year we're projecting 600 pounds of Willamette, you know, and there's no historical analytical data because you don't have that yet, so you can't say, oh, last year we had Willamettes at 4.5%, and or the year before they were 4, last year they were 5, this year we're hoping for like 6% or whatever, you know. So none of that's there yet. All this is there with hop growers in the United States that have been in business for, you know, like 20 or 30 or 40 years or 50 years, and they're growing 400, you know, 400 acres of hops, and they have all of the analysis and historical data and everything. So you know that when you contract with that person for 600 or 800 pounds of hops, for one thing you're going to get them. For another thing, you're going to get the analysis, and the other thing is you can count on a quality product.
What about price?
Well, price varies. It's just, you know, price varies every year in the hop market. You know, it's like, as soon as somebody says, oh, there's a shortage of hops, you know, the price shoots up like, you know, and then 2 years later, it's like, well, we got a big surplus of hops, and, you know, it's a commodity. It's like anything. It's like oil. It's like, you know, tobacco. It's like grain, anything. It's a commodity. So, you know, when the demand goes up, the price goes up. So, you know, as the demand goes down. Now, the demand is going to go down because, especially in Ontario, because the market's changing. So, like Drew said, we're going to get more and more market share, but the people who are coming into the market now are demanding more balanced beers. Okay, so the hoppy IPAs are always going to be there. The style's not going to disappear, but the consumer is going to shift. There's going to be a shift in the consumer. Okay, so it's going to switch more now to an older demographic, because older people are going to be coming into the market now. People my age, well, maybe younger. Maybe probably younger. But, you know, like, they're not all young hipsters now, which fueled the market in the early days. It was like all young hipsters that fueled the market. Now it's more guys that are like, you know, oh, I always drank Molson Canadian, but, you know, I picked up a couple of those craft beers the other day, and I really liked them, and, you know, I think I'm going to buy some more of that, you know. And Loblaws has actually done a really good job on their stores for craft beer. Like, they've done, I think, the best of all the grocery stores. I think Loblaws has done the best job with the coolers and the displays. And if Dougie gets elected, we're going to see a lot more of that. So, you know, so that's going to be good. We're going to open up the marketplace. Cross-selling is something that I've been pushing for I've been around 21 years, so I've seen just about everything. So professionally, I've been brewing for 21 years. The brewery's been going for 21 years. So I've seen just about everything. And when I started, you know, if you sold 3 kegs of beer a week, it was, yeah! You know, like, whoa, we sold 3 kegs this week. But, you know, so the market's come full swing and it's growing exponentially now. So, you know, like, hopefully we're going to keep going. I think we are. I think we're just going to gain more market share. Now, and it's going to be 2 more balanced beers, which means we're going to be using less hops, which is a good thing for us because it gets down our costs. But it's also a good thing for you guys because it gives you guys the ability to catch up to the market.
Jack,
So,
what are you doing on hops?
Do you want to take
Your old flame beer is
As a hop grower, it'd be nice to see the back end of this. I've gone to a lot of breweries. Is there any way for you guys, as a Craft Brewery Association, to put on the website what you guys are looking for? Like, it's really hard. We get it where I want Brewer's Gold or I want Nugget or this, and we're trying to figure out what to grow.
That's
like you
something.
said, you keep bringing up Willamette. It'd be really nice to know you needed it.
Well,
if I happen to have it, I can knock on your door or write you or whatever and say,
Well, I agree. I put out a survey, I think even on your website, asking you guys that I got brand new fields going into production. Tell me what to plant. Tell me.
Even as
Matter of
brewer,
fact,
even
I'll
on the
rent the
web,
space to you. You own the plant.
but even on the website to say so-and-so brewers are looking, next season I would like to see such and such and such. Like,
Yeah,
I've been getting a lot of
we can do a
signals,
survey
you know,
like
we
that.
can't grow it.
We can
Well,
do a survey like that.
I think that's what we're trying to
Yeah.
figure out together
Yeah.
is
through some kind of a, we'll call it a shopping cart, is what are they looking for? What do they want? Are they looking for pelletized resin, whole leaf? And what varieties are they looking for? Then we can take that information and go back to our group and say, this is what they're looking for. Because right now, I think there's some people that are getting those answers and some people that aren't getting those answers, and that's where we need to kind of, we're working on that relationship. You know, we just got married a couple of years ago, and we're still working on our relationship here. And I think that's really what it is. It's a relationship with OCB and you know, basic brewers in general is, you know, learning what each other needs and then working on that. So
you can say earlier quickly about, like, I had a contract with Centennial. Well, guess what? Nobody liked his beer. He doesn't want a Centennial anymore.
Well, that's why I said you still need to. We can put the survey out. We can say all that. But then what do you do with it? You still need to. That'll help you guide a little bit. But you still need to pick 4, 5, 10 brewers. There's 230 of them out there now, and start to build that relationship. You've got to start to build that one-on-one relationship. In my opinion.
Let's go real small, real quick. What if somehow on your website, so and so is looking for, she can blog out or he can blog out, I'm looking for Centennial, and we can respond to that. I happen to have 20 pounds. Somebody else happens to have 30 pounds. We can contact. Like, I'm sorry, I'm way out in Strathroy. I can't get to this end. We ship.
Well, there's a lot of breweries in Strathroy, that region. You've got quite a few.
We got a couple.
No, well, just go a little further into,
London's
go down, well, London area's got quite a few, and you can certainly swing into Kitchener, Waterloo. I mean, there's tons there. But
I got the mic. And I'm never giving it back.
Tell us what you know.
All right. So my name's Jack. I'm the founder and president of Old Flame. Eric's my guy down there. Here's the problem, as I see it. Everything that we do, everybody on this table, is a moving target. Our industry has been a moving target. The growth of the industry has been a moving target. What the beer drinker wants to drink on Monday and on Wednesday, and today being St. Paddy's Day. By the way, who picked St. Paddy's Day to have the Hop Brewers Conference? Because we are rammed right now at the brewery, and every guy at this table and woman at this table wants to get out of here and go drink some beer, and not green beer. So here's my thing. Old Flame is a very, very much the what Drew talked about. We're in Port Perry. We built our brewery. We started with a 15 hectoliter brew house. We started with 3 30-barrel tanks and 1 15-barrel tank. We now have 9 30-barrel tanks. We have 2 60-barrel tanks. We have 4 15-barrel tanks. We make primarily German lagers. So we're a little bit ahead of the curve that we're making drinkable, sessionable beers. Little plug, our Red Vienna Lager won a gold medal in 2015, and our Munich Dunkel won a gold medal in Canada in 2017. We are always going to make a blonde, a red, a brunette, an IPA. Those are our signature beers. We're going to make them all the time, and we're going to make as much of them as we possibly can and what the market will hold. But our industry, as we see it, I'm a storyteller. I'm a marketing guy. Our brewery is all about tourism. And it's all about changing out the name or the term craft beer to local beer. So we are very much immersed in our community. But here's the problem. We make those German-style lager beers, very sessionable, drinkable beers. Eric is always going to be in the market as those beers continue to sell. Eric's always going to be in the market for the hops for those beers. But we can't just sit on our hands and make those 3 or 4 beers. We have to constantly make another beer, a seasonal beer, another style. I have to name it, I have to sell it, I have to see if the market wants it. Eric has to brew it. That's a moving target constantly. And right now, you know, like we make 2 great IPAs, Perry Love Mary and Scary Mary, but now there's not as much IPAs being drank, and people are coming to the marketplace wanting sessionable beers. Now sours are a big thing. It just constantly moves. So as Drew is saying, the one thing about the craft beer industry or local beer industry is that we have to make sessionable, drinkable, sellable beers. They create the revenue. They give us our revenue, but at the same time, we then have to, every season, we have to make at least 2 seasonal beers. Those seasonal beers give us the street cred. Because there's still the guys that talk about beer, the ones that blog, the ones that have a comment, okay? They're the ones that are always looking for the new thing to talk about. So we don't know, I don't know what Eric is going to consider brewing this summer. We have a couple of summer beers, we have a blueberry beer, things that we like, but it might change. There might be 10 blueberries out there and Eric decides we're not going to make a blueberry beer. So what he's going to require from hops, he does have to go to that store and check off what he needs that day. So what I'm hearing, our industry, we're in this with you. Our industry is a moving target. We cannot tell you what to grow and produce.
No, that's what I was getting at. Just one quick. If OCB turned around and all you guys as members put on your site somewhere for us members to look at to say, you tomorrow or next week need 10 pounds of Centennial, we can contact you.
It's a wonderful industry. Everybody helps each other. But as the industry is growing, recipes and what we want are getting a little bit closer to our chest. We're not putting it out there what we're actually trying to. Everybody's trying to come up with a new thing, something interesting, something cool. But what I'm getting at is that I know the Ontario Craft Brewers Association, by the way, they've done an incredible job with our industry, so hats off to them. But they're moving towards trying to get us like craft beer stores, or getting us an opportunity where I can sell Second Wedge in Port Perry. I mean, I can sell Sauter Street, I can sell Lake Wilcox. So we have a store, so the consumer in my area can come in there and try some other beers. When these guys go to choose hops, if the Hop Growers Association were just growing what you like and what you want to drop, or what you want to grow and what your soil produces the best, if you had an opportunity to put that into a store, into a co-op, where we can just show up or online can order beer, order hops from all over Ontario. I will tell you one thing. If we could consistently make seasonal beers using only Ontario hops, it would be a wonderful marketing story. It resonates with people, the consumer, all the time. And when even myself, if I'm Googling or I'm doing some research and I find out that there's a brewery, let's say Cowbell out in Blythe, and they're using a specific hop in southwestern Ontario, and they're telling the story that they're using an Ontario hop, it's a very exciting time, and it's a wonderful thing that the consumer will, and this consumer will drive from Durham out to Blythe to go and try that all Ontario beer. And so I think it's really, the relationship is about you guys understanding that we can't tell you, because it's a moving target on our end, the growth is a moving target. On your end, you also have a moving target. But if you just produce what you like and it's very, very good quality, high quality, and you approach us and we have a list of things that we can choose, Eric would definitely make decisions based on what hops are available in Ontario and are at his disposal.
Well, I just want to say thanks for that response, because that's really, you know, it gets to the point. That's what we're looking for. I know you need quality, and we need to set up a one-stop stop. Because I know you don't want to give the Colonel Sanders recipe away. And, well, I understand that. Making beer, you have your secret recipe, but for us, that gives us direction as an association, what should we be doing for our growers. And if they do what they're good at, then we as an association can develop that. We'll call it the one-shop stop. And then you don't have to give away your recipe, but you can like Gordon's Food Services. Oh, this is Ontario, that's American, and you can, through your shopping list, we can put that on there, and this is from whatever. As the industry grows, the most important thing, in my opinion, is authenticity. Yeah. Both from the design of the brewery, the marketing plan, the plan of the brewery, it's all about being authentic. And all these great educated brewers that are coming out of Niagara College and have all this experience, I mean, look at the age of the guys and girls at the end of the thing. Yeah. They all want to make something that it's their own. Mm-hmm.
that it's authentic. Unfortunately, what we have is an industry that's growing very, very quickly, and everybody just copies what everybody else does, right? The business models are being copied, you know, look, design, feel being copied, but everybody wants to make something that's original, unique, and has that authenticity. And so if people are out there picking 3 or 4 different Ontario hops to blend together to make a very authentic beer, that's what's going to resonate with the consumer, especially the ones that keep writing about beer.
Awesome. Scott.
I think everybody up there is brewing pretty traditional style beers, and so maybe it's a question for the brewers mostly. But what do you think the difference is? Are you willing to use Canadian Saz and you're brewing a Czech Pils? How particular are you about a Czech Pils or your lagers with having a German Hallertau? Are you guys nervous of that at all in those traditional styles?
I don't brew any lagers, so I can't answer that. I brew all ales, but a lot of times as a brewer, when we're formulating a recipe, we will actually look to see what's available out there. So like if we're gonna make a new beer, we might go, okay, well, we're gonna make this style of beer, so let's see what's out there available in the way of hops. So we actually go hop shopping, or we'll shop for different ingredients because we're looking for, you know, to formulate this recipe. So when we're in the early stages of it, we're looking for, you know, for that particular hop or whatever, right? So, or something that's a unique hop, okay? So, you know, that's, you know, so it's, you grow what you grow, just grow high quality product, okay? And people will buy it because it's a good product, you know, like we'll make room for it. So, you know, like things are interchangeable, you know, like, so, you know, there's so many different types of hops and it's so interchangeable that you can work things into your recipe at any time. It's like being a chef, right? So you want to create a new sauce. Well, you go out and you see what's available. You go out in your backyard, see what you got in the way of herbs, so, you know, and you cook her up. That's what we do, you know, so that's how we operate a lot of times. So, yeah, we try to stay true to style, but, you know, there's great variations in styles now, and, you know, everyone's looking to produce something unique. So, you know, like I shop hop, so, you know, if I'm coming up with a new formulation for a new beer, I'll say, okay, well, let me see what we got. And I'll start researching and start shopping and start looking. So if I go on to the Ontario Hop Growers webpage and they have a listing of what's available, and I look at there and I go, oh, this guy's got, like, you know, whatever, you know, 400 pounds of Challenger hops there. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna call that guy up and see if I can get a couple 100 pounds of those suckers, because I want to brew this beer and I'm going to use Challengers. So, you know, basically cooking and brewing is a lot alike. So, you know, you're making a recipe, you go with what, you know, if you can source local ingredients, great. You know, and if they're high quality, great. If you can't, then you go everywhere. You know, it's an international market, so you look for whatever is good.
You brewing lagers? Who brews lagers?
They brew them.
So how likely are you to make a distinction between a Canadian Saz or a Czech Saz? How likely are you to?
So for me, we brew 95% German lager style beers, and I can tell you we use 98% is one particular hop type. I'm not so concerned that it comes from Germany. If it comes from Ontario, that's great, but it has to be the same quality and it has to give the same characteristics to my beer. People expect a very, you know, specific thing from our brand of beer. If I can get those same characteristics from a hop grown here in Ontario, I'm more than happy to experiment with it. But I'm not willing to change the overall profile of our main lager beers just to buy an Ontario hop, as lovely as it is, and as much as I love the local hop growers. At the end of the day, it's about consistency for my brands of beer. So if I can get it from you here in Ontario, fantastic, I'm willing to talk about it. But if not, then as Bruce said, you know, I'm gonna go where I can to get that consistency of hop for my products.
Catherine, you want to?
No, I just wanted to add on to that. The notion of terroir, the hops in Ontario is becoming something kind of interest. And I heard from a brewer that he can't just swap out American Cascade, for example, with Ontario Cascade because the flavor, the characteristics, as you mentioned, are so different. And I'm wondering if it's not so much a matter of subbing out your hops as it is creating a whole new beer style around Ontario flavors from hops. Is that something you thought of? Or?
And sure, that's...
Hey, Eric, can you just repeat what she said, so I think some of the people can't, just so you know what you're responding to?
Yeah, so Catherine just mentioned that the idea of terroir and hops and how where the hops are grown affects, you know, how that hop turns out. So you can't necessarily do a one-to-one substitution for, you know, an American Cascade versus an Ontario-grown Cascade. And so she's asking if you know, float the idea of creating a new brand of beer around those hops. I think that's a new beer style around Ontario flavors. And I think that's something that is happening in Ontario. I've definitely seen some seasonal beers and one-off brews from Ontario brewers that are going for the fully local, you know, local malts, local hops, and all of that. So it is something that's happening. And whether that becomes a core brand or not really is dictated by how well it sells, like how well that beer sells. You know, it'd be great to make an Ontario Pilsner, but if it doesn't sell, then then we don't make it, right? So.
By the consumer.
It'd be scary to find out that Ontario product might actually taste better.
I mean, that's not scary for me. If it tastes better, that's what I want to drink.
Yeah, that just seems to be the case. I mean, we're trying to compare a product, or to introduce a product that we know is a good product, but the reluctancy seems to be, well, we're using a product now, we're happy with it, and our customers seem to be happy with it, but we're just a little bit reluctant because we're not sure that quality is there. And if you happen to try something, you realize, wow, this product is amazing. Maybe we can actually sell more beer with an Ontario sourced ingredient. People are really like.
Yeah, I don't really think there's anything to be afraid of on that because, and I agree, that should happen. And sometimes, you know, from a marketing perspective, you know how people always want what they can't get. I don't know why. That just seems to happen. Yeah. And you know, if you produce something that's brilliant, and all of a sudden, okay, you don't have enough hops to keep it going, well, at least you know there's an opportunity there to keep pushing forward to tap into that market. And you know, when we started here today, I said, how many people are buying, you know, Ontario hops? Or sorry, how many are doing with an Ontario brewery right now? A lot of you put your hands up. So it is starting to happen. Certainly more than the last, when I first came here about 3-4 years ago. I've personally seen a lot more connections. We have done things on our website where we put the Ontario Hop Growers on there. We put all of your companies on there. We said put your products on there, and it's like, you know, like most things, you put it up there, but people don't update their profiles or update things. That they just sit there. And even our own brewers do that. We tell them constantly update things, but they're busy brewing. These guys are, you know, they're washing out tanks and doing this and doing that, and they're going, Noxie, I'm not filling out your profile. I got beer, so I got to do stuff. So we're trying to work out ways to make, to make that all happen. We are making, in my opinion, we're making progress. We just signed a new MOU this past couple months ago, where the Ontario Craft Brewers, the hop growers, and even the GFO, we've signed an MOU to start working together in a more collaborative way. So there are a lot of things happening behind the scenes, and I think, like I said, the more you know your brewers and establish a relationship with these brewers, and they get to know you, it's the same old story. People like to do business with people they like, and you know, the more you get to know each other, the better it is. You know, and so I just highly would encourage everybody to start to, you know, make a greater effort to have one-on-one relationships.
Yeah. And in that vein, how do we understand how you guys do experiments? Like, Eric mentioned that you like to experiment, or you need to experiment to see whether or not what Doug's pointing out is actually true. Run me through that experimental process.
Yeah, so if I were looking to experiment with my beer, let's say I wanted to do, if I wanted to try out an Ontario-grown version of the hop that we use in our blonde lager,
right.
I would, I would brew a batch of that blonde lager using the Ontario hops on, let's say, a pilot brewing system. I'd brew a similar batch using the hops that I use right now. I could brew a third batch doing a blend of the two kind of hops, and then kind of do a taste profile and see if it's going to be tasting the same, smelling the same, and then which batch of that you look back and you say, oh, so wow, the Ontario hops are just as good, or giving me the same characteristics, or better, because I'm sure they're just as good. But I need to know if I'm rolling it out in a production beer that's going to be year round, that those hops are going to be consistently that good, that I'm going to have access to them in the quantity that I need, especially if I'm going to be subbing out, my current contract, which I know for sure I'm going to get the hops that I need for my lagers. I need to know that I can get that from Ontario, and for myself personally, that's one of the larger hurdles for me. We're not really a brewery that does a lot of out there different IPAs or wildly hopped styles of beer. So for Old Flame, at least, I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn here, Jack, but we use mainly one style of hop. I contract for a whole bunch of it, and it goes in almost every beer that we make. So my main concern in going to a locally grown product is the availability, the quality, and the consistency of that hop, not only in the use in the beer, but in storable shelf life, in how it's packaged, and how it's transported. Because right now, I know what I'm getting, and it's been very reliable, and we've never had any problems. We don't currently work with any local farmers, so I can't speak to that relationship. I'm sure it would be fine, but it's still a young industry in Ontario, and for me to commit to a wholly Ontario hop for a main production line, there's a lot of information I would need. There'd be a lot of conversations we need to have about that.
Actually, exactly what you said is what we were looking for.
So,
thank you.
Perfect. I'm going to take one question from.
Can I just make a comment?
Quick comment.
Yeah,
and then,
quick comment.
and,
So
yeah.
Chris Gillis, Durham College. So I think what Eric basically said, if I could reinterpret, is brewers really aren't all that in the business of that small-scale experimentation. But both Durham College and Niagara, by the way, have small pilot lines. And I believe a program that could seek government funding could be done to make a number of tasting samples with local hops, so make beer with local hops, get that out to brewers like Eric so they can actually taste it, understand what it tastes like in a beer, make some informed choices for that. And I mean, if that's a resource the colleges and government funding could provide, I think that's a resource that ought to be asked.
Okay, I'm going to take one more question because we're hitting the 5 o'clock and some of us got a bit of a drive yet. So, Edgar, you want the last question of the day?
You mentioned consistency on the hops, the ones that you contract for a year or two. Do you get the same consistency from the crop 2015, 16, 17, like the same alphas in the 6%?
For the hops that we contract, we get.
Say if the alpha was 7.1, is that the same every year?
It's not necessarily the same alpha acid every year, but it will be the same alpha acid throughout the whole crop year that I'm ordering. So if I'm contracted for 2017's crop of hop X, I know that when I order it in September or when I order it in December, it's going to be the same batch of hops, and it's going to have the same characteristics, the same analysis, the same alpha acid, so I don't have to worry so much about adjusting my recipes. That changes, of course, based on what hops you have contracted, but for us, that tends to be the case.
Anybody else make a quick comment? Father-son here, so you want to get the...
Father-son?
Eric, I am not your father. I listen. This might really tick a lot of people off, but they're about to legalize cannabis. Which cannabis brands are they making the most of right now, or growing the most of right now, and which one is going to sell the most in the new OCS?
Yeah.
Maybe. Who knows?
Maybe. Yeah.
No, nobody knows, right? And that's the same thing. Us as brewers, they make different beers all the time. Look at Bellwoods in Toronto. Look at Five Paddles right here in Whitby. Fantastic breweries making one-offs constantly. They're predicting this beer is going to sell to their customer. And I think the cannabis thing is like, if you were growing cannabis right now, what are you growing? You could have a whole crop, and that it just doesn't resonate with the consumer.
It would be the one the government grows the most of.
Probably.
Yeah. So, anyways, I just want to say, good conversation. This is a relationship. The hop growers are going to have to continue, and I think a single selling desk or a shopping cart, because as you're trying to hit a moving target, we just need to put the products in front of you so that you can shop at our store. I think that's really what we want to do. We want to create an Ontario hop grower store for Ontario breweries, and we may have to do a couple surveys. Well, no, we don't want to be any of those marks. We just so.
Every day on my email, I get another survey thrown at me, but I'll tell you, if I was surveyed about my hop usage for OCB and for OHGA, I'd fill it in.
Okay, well, we thank you for that, and I want to thank the panel for coming out today. I would say I'm going to do this in jousting, so our punishment is we picked St. Patty's Day for the event.
Didn't ask us. We did show up. I got some in the truck.
That's okay, and we appreciate it. So, other than that, I just wanted to kind of finalize the day and say thank everybody for staying the course of the day for our annual meeting and listening to the speakers. Please take a few minutes and fill out those surveys. They'll help us in our next AGM and our location and that. So thank everybody and have a safe drive home. Motion to adjourn.
All right. I think so. What I'm going to have to edit it a bit. Yeah, totally. I think we need any meetings because at least they had to draw for beer. Well, that's what this ticket is supposed to be for. It's like, we still doing the draw? I don't know. Yeah, I think that's what that's for. Because there is beer there. Shall I go check? Okay, let's go check. So I got to come over and get caught up. And that's going on. Well, just as a heads up, you might go through the grapevine. Brian's got some health issues. What? So it's got stage 4. He's okay right now, but in terms of long-term diagnosis, his dad just passed away a couple weeks ago too. So that was 687. I mean, they went on a cruising commercial. Is that where they're going now? Got influenza, and then had to be airlifted back from Belize to
So he's so yeah, well, they put his dad in the ground a couple weeks ago up in Poland. So that shows he's going to be buried at St. George's, just across the road from Fort Valley. So, yeah, it's what it is. I just everybody seems to have heard about it now on the news, but the whole church community had heard about it. I think Harry Hughes knew about it, so did the counselors, because a lot of them attended the funeral, right? So everybody, I guess once you tell the church, everybody knows. So yeah. Oh, we're still enforcing it. Absolutely. No, we're stopping water equipment. That's my goal is one, keep it up and running so we can enjoy it. Yeah. So I still got some help. I think we're going to get a couple of years out of it. But, no, it's. I mean, what he's going through his treatment right now, just to basically sort of give him. Oh, no, try to talk exactly. It's all about that. They're treating it. He's it's life is short. That's exactly. So to me, yeah, I've been doing that since when he found out. He stood up for me, I stood up for him. So in terms of wedding parties, really tight. It's we're not losing it. Just a business partner. But it's all good. Yeah, absolutely. He doesn't come up with much of it. Just he gets winded very easily. He's not that he's really emotive, but he's not running marathons. About half. So once he was very the purpose of putting things like septic, they staying up there a lot. Up with that sometimes. Yeah, I'll keep just a little bedroom cottage or just a, not necessarily no residence because you're not allowed to do that in an agricultural. Yeah, there you go, right? So, what do you call it? Tiny house? That's a tiny house, yeah. Actually, trust me, one of the things I was looking at was getting a little bit of it, right? And just putting it in the back of the property, and they just had a pump bed every now and then. Yeah, for the back of the building, that's exactly what it is. Everything else is good with you? Oh, yeah? Right now, wait for it until we check it out. It may take a while. Uh-oh, okay. So I don't think, sorry, we're in April, so questions are getting busy. Yes. So I'm like, I'll figure out something. Keep me able to speak, just a text away. Yes. It is. Yep. It is good in terms of the whole irrigation side of things, and it as you put in there, there's the system out too, so that's not an issue. I told you about a side spreader. I'm going to till between the interrows this year. So I know we had yeah, probably playing the rings up in July kind of thing, just to keep this. exactly. Maybe put a bit of nitrogen back into the soil, but in terms of like what we've got there right now, which is just sort of the original hayfield, we got to get rid of it. Eating is just stupid.
I think it's kind of the hills on both sides.
So that's what I was looking at.
I wasn't a little bit
It sounds like it, yeah.
So it seems to be a little bit.
That's just it's absolutely.
Gotta do something.
Okay,
all right, great to get it. Good to see you. All right. So no Todd today? If not, check with the boss.
I'm gonna get in trouble if I say any line.
Yeah, let me get backed up.
Okay, sounds good, mate.
Are we responsible for tearing down the stakes? No.
Put that there.
So for us, yeah, we set their own as best we can. Yes. Okay.